June 6, 1944. Waves crash violently against the steel hulls of landing craft. Thousands of soldiers pray quietly, clutching their rifles. The largest invasion in human history is about to begin. But hidden among these ships is something different. A strange-looking machine, wrapped in canvas and steel. No one is quite sure if it will even work. Yet this invention might change the course of the entire war. They call it the DD Sherman. A floating tank that can swim across the ocean. It sounds ridiculous, even impossible. But desperate times create desperate ideas. The Allies knew one truth. Infantry alone couldn't take the beaches. German bunkers, machine guns, and mines would tear them apart. They needed tanks, and they needed them fast. But how do you land a 30-ton tank on a heavily defended beach? That's where British engineer Nicholas Straussler stepped in. A man more inventor than soldier, more dreamer than realist. He proposed a radical design, a tank that floats. His idea was laughed at, mocked, even called suicidal. He wrapped a Sherman tank in a foldable rubber screen, attached propellers at the back, and claimed it could swim through water like a boat. Many officers thought he'd lost his mind. But one man believed him, Major General Percy Hobart. Hobart had a reputation for thinking outside the box. He commanded a special unit known as Hobart's Funnies. Their mission, to invent weird machines for impossible battles. Flamethrower tanks, bridge layers, mine flails, nothing was too strange. If it could save a soldier's life, Hobart approved it. The duplex drive Sherman was his favorite experiment. He knew someday, somewhere, it would be needed. That someday arrived on D-Day. In the freezing waters off Normandy, 80 DD Shermans lined up to launch. The soldiers inside were seasick, cold, and terrified. They had no idea if they would sink or swim. The signal came. "Launch the tanks!" Engines roared, waves crashed, and one by one they entered the water. For a few minutes, it looked like a miracle. Tanks floated, propellers churned, and they headed toward shore. But then, disaster struck. Waves grew taller, winds stronger. The rubber screens began to tear under pressure. Tank after tank disappeared beneath the waves. Men inside screamed as water rushed in. They tried to escape, but most couldn't. The sea swallowed machines and soldiers together. Dozens of brave men never even reached the beach. Yet, against all odds, a handful survived. A few DD Shermans made it to shore, crawling out of the surf. Sand clogged their tracks, bullets bounced off their armor. But they were there and ready to fight. They rolled straight into chaos. Machine guns raked the sand. Artillery exploded around them. Infantry cheered as the tanks opened fire. For the first time, the tide of battle began to turn. On Omaha Beach, it was a different story. Nearly all DD tanks sank before reaching land. American soldiers were left exposed, pinned down by German guns. The losses were brutal, hundreds killed in minutes. But on the British and Canadian beaches, the story was different. Many of their DD tanks survived the rough sea. They blasted bunkers, cleared mines, and created paths. Without them, the landings might have failed completely. German soldiers were stunned. They had never seen tanks coming out of the ocean. Some even believed they were new amphibious monsters fear spread faster than bullets. The few surviving DD Shermans became legends that day. They turned the tide on several beaches. Their guns silenced key defenses in minutes. And they gave courage to men who had almost given up hope. By the evening of June 6th, Normandy was secured. Tens of thousands of soldiers were alive because of those tanks, and yet very few ever learned their names. History often forgets the quiet heroes of invention. Nicholas Straussler never became famous. His idea was mocked more than celebrated. But his crazy design saved countless lives. Sometimes, the strangest ideas win wars. Major General Hobart continued building new designs, each weirder than the last. each one saving lives. He called them tools for survival. The soldiers just called them miracles. After the war, many DD Shermans were scrapped. Their remains lay rusting under the waves. Divers still find them today, silent, cold, forgotten. But their story deserves to be remembered. Imagine sitting inside a tank, waves crashing all around you. You can't see the shore, only grey water and fear. One wrong wave, and it's over. That's what those men faced. They didn't hesitate. They believed in the mission and in their strange machines. They trusted a rubber wall to keep them alive. That kind of courage is hard to find. When the first DD Sherman reached land, soldiers cheered. They thought it was a miracle sent from above. It fired its gun, destroying a German bunker instantly. That sound, the echo of survival, filled the beach. Each tank that made it added new hope. They became moving shields for advancing troops. Behind them, medics pulled the wounded to safety. Forward, the path to victory opened. In the chaos, one soldier reportedly said, "If not for those tanks, we'd all be dead." That line was never recorded officially, but veterans repeated it for decades. As the battle ended, the beach was covered in smoke and silence. Bodies, debris, and shattered metal filled the sand. Among them lay the wrecks of the DD Shermans, silent witnesses to bravery and failure intertwined. War doesn't always reward genius. It buries it under metals and mud. But history owes these machines recognition, because they carried the impossible, hope itself. When reporters asked about the floating tanks, most generals shrugged it off. They didn't want to admit how risky it had been. Success in war often hides its near disasters. But veterans remembered. They told stories to their families and children, stories of tanks that swam and friends who didn't make it, stories that still echo today. Every year, on D-Day's anniversary, flowers are thrown into the sea. Many of those flowers honor the men who sank with their tanks. No graves, no names, just waves. Their sacrifice kept history moving forward. The DD Sherman was a symbol of human imagination. It showed that courage isn't only found in battlefields. It can exist in blueprints, in experiments, in failure. And that's what makes it timeless. Even today, engineers study its design. It became the foundation for future amphibious vehicles. From Vietnam to modern rescue crafts, it all traces back to one crazy wartime idea. If you ever visit Normandy, look toward the sea. Somewhere out there, beneath the waves, lies the remains of those tanks. Silent, but undefeated. Their story is not just about war. It's about trust between man and machine, between faith and fear, and between invention and sacrifice. Many people think wars are won by weapons, but they're really won by ideas. Ideas that seem foolish until they change everything, like a tank that decided to swim. Nicholas Straussler's design was ahead of its time. He didn't build it for fame or glory. He built it because he believed one good idea could save thousands of lives. And it did. It saved soldiers who would go on to raise families, build nations, and tell stories like this. That's the real victory. When the world talks about D-Day, we hear names like Eisenhower and Montgomery. But behind them were engineers, mechanics, and dreamers. Their ideas turned chaos into triumph. Some call the DD Sherman a failure, because so many sank before reaching shore. But failure doesn't erase courage. It defines it. Those who drowned were not forgotten by their comrades. Every survivor remembered the sound of metal breaking, the bubbles, the silence after. War changes men, but memory keeps them alive. Historians now call the DD Sherman a daring experiment that half worked, but fully inspired. And maybe that's enough. Because history isn't just about success. It's about trying the impossible when nothing else will work. It's about believing in madness for the sake of hope. That's what these men did, and why we still talk about them. 80 years later, their courage still floats above the waves. If you watch the old footage carefully, you can see them. Small canvas walls, trembling in the sea. Behind each was a man praying to survive. That image alone defines the human spirit. When we look back at history, we often see only the victories and defeats. But in between those moments lie stories like this. Stories that remind us why invention matters. The DD Sherman didn't just fight a war. It fought against disbelief, against fear, against nature itself. And somehow, it won, at least for a moment. That moment changed everything. Today, technology moves faster than ever, but the spirit behind those tanks remains. A reminder that progress begins with a single, strange idea, and the courage to try it. So next time you hear about D-Day, remember the machines that swam through hell. Remember the men who trusted them, and the engineer who refused to give up. Because history isn't just written by generals. It's written by dreamers. And sometimes the dream itself floats, just like the forgotten tank that saved D-Day.